Listen to me now and believe me later. You want strength, you want power, you want vision. Then you must understand this: when it comes to global politics, the world is not a game of toys, it's a game of giants. And today we talk about why Donald Trump, the man who loves to say he is tough, cannot afford to be tough on India anymore. You need to know this because it's not about politics, it's about leverage. It's about future, and it's about survival in a world that is changing faster than your last set in the gym. So open your ears, focus like a laser, and let's break it down. When you look at India today, you are not looking at the same India from 20 or 30 years ago. No, my friends, you are looking at an unstoppable machine, a powerhouse with more than 1 billion people, young, hungry, ambitious, ready to push forward like a freight train that nobody can stop. Think about this: the average age in India is under 30. That means energy, drive, innovation, workforce. Compare that to many countries where populations are getting older, slower, more dependent. India is not slowing down. India is accelerating, building muscle while others are losing strength. And this is why Trump, or any leader for that matter, cannot afford to underestimate or antagonize India. It's not just about diplomacy, it's about raw economic force. India is on track to become the third largest economy in the world, behind only the United States and China. That means markets trade billions of dollars in deals, opportunities for American companies. If you try to play tough with India, you are not just talking about hurting another country, you are talking about losing access to one of the biggest, fastest growing consumer markets in the history of the world. India's technology sector is booming like a bodybuilder, hitting new personal records every week. Silicon Valley itself runs on the brainpower of Indian engineers, developers, CEOs. Google, Microsoft, Adobe, leaders of these companies are Indians. This is not just coincidence, this is proof of a culture that is now deeply embedded in the global economy. If Trump tries to be tough on India, he risks alienating not just a nation, but the very backbone of the digital economy that America relies on. It's like cutting off the power supply and then wondering why the gym lights went out. And don't forget the investment flows. American businesses want India and Indian businesses want America. There's mutual growth, a synergy that is like protein and training. You need both to get stronger. Foreign direct investment, partnerships, startups scaling globally. This is the kind of momentum that makes it impossible to treat India as a minor player. If Trump gets tough, he risks breaking these vital links. And believe me, in today's competitive world, no country can afford to lose such an ally. Another point is resilience. India has proven its ability to bounce back from challenges. Look at the pandemic. At global disruptions, India still manages to rise, adapt, and push forward. This resilience makes it a reliable partner. America cannot ignore this. If you want to stand strong against global competitors, you need a partner who can take the punches and keep coming back stronger. That is India. So when Trump thinks about tariffs, trade wars, or any kind of political arm wrestling with India, he has to think twice. Because this is not some small negotiation across the table. This is the future of billions of dollars, millions of jobs, and strategic influence in the world's fastest growing markets. When you talk about global strategy, you cannot ignore the giant in the room, China. It is aggressive, it is expanding, it is challenging America's position in every corner of the world. Now listen carefully, because this is the key. India is the counterbalance. Without India, America stands alone in Asia, facing a competitor with the population, the manufacturing power, the military strength, and the ambition to dominate. But with India, there is balance, there is leverage, there is a partner with the scale and the will to push back against Beijing's moves. Trump knows this, and that is why he cannot afford to be reckless with India. Look at the geography. India sits in a position of massive strategic importance. The Indian Ocean is not just water, it is a highway for global trade, oil, and resources. Whoever controls these lanes has power over the flow of the world's economy. China is building ports, bases, and alliances in this region to dominate it, but India is the natural guardian of that ocean. With its navy, its reach, and its alliances, India becomes the shield that prevents China from gaining unchecked control. If Trump decides to push India away, he risks weakening America's entire Indo-Pacific strategy, because there is no replacement for the role India plays in that region. Now think about military cooperation. America wants allies who can stand on their own feet, not just depend on protection. India has one of the largest standing armies in the world, advanced missile programs, a growing defense industry, and a willingness to modernize with American technology, joint exercises, intelligence sharing, strategic dialogues. These are not symbolic gestures. They are the foundations of a real partnership that holds back Chinese aggression. Trump, as someone who prides himself on toughness, knows that strength comes from allies who bring something real to the table. And India does exactly that, and it goes deeper. The Quad Alliance, United States, India, Japan, Australia, this is not just a club, it is a fortress built to counterbalance China's expansion. If America loses India's trust, the entire architecture of this alliance collapses. Without India, the Indo-Pacific becomes unbalanced, and China gains a freer hand to impose its will. That is why Trump cannot afford to treat India as a target of pressure. He must see India as a pillar of strategy, because otherwise America's hand weakens on the global chessboard. There is also the psychological factor. China fears India's rise not because of size alone, but because India represents a democratic counterweight. 2 billion people between China and India. One is ruled with control, the other with elections. That difference matters in the long game of influence. America can point to India as proof that democracy works at scale. This is not just about weapons and trade. It is about narrative, about showing the world there is an alternative to authoritarian dominance. If Trump alienates India, he weakens that message, and he strengthens China's hand in shaping the global story. When you look at the political landscape of the United States today, you cannot ignore the growing force of the Indian-American community. They are no longer just a small minority, they are a powerhouse of influence, wealth, and organization. Indian Americans are one of the highest earning communities in the country, highly educated, deeply networked, and increasingly engaged in politics. This means they bring not only money and resources, but also votes, activism, and visibility. For Trump or any leader who wants to win elections, alienating this group would be a strategic mistake. Their influence stretches far beyond numbers. It stretches into decision-making rooms, campaign funding, and the corridors of policy. Think about this. Indian Americans are rising in every arena: medicine, technology, law, business, media, and government. They are CEOs of major corporations. They are leaders of hospitals. They are innovators in Silicon Valley. And they are sitting in Congress. Figures like Kamala Harris, Pramila Jayapal, and Ro Khanna are not just symbols. They represent a growing presence in the American political system. And beyond elected officials, Indian Americans fill advisory roles, think tanks, lobbying groups, and campaign teams. Their ability to mobilize resources and shape narratives makes them a group no politician can afford to dismiss. Now, consider the swing states. In places like Texas, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, the Indian American vote can make the difference in close elections. They may not be the largest bloc. They are concentrated in districts where margins are razor thin. Trump, who thrives on razor-edge victories, cannot ignore this. If he takes a hostile stance against India, it does not just stay in foreign policy papers. It translates into campaign ads, social media campaigns, grassroots organizing, and fundraising drives against him. Community will not hesitate to make its voice heard if it feels insulted or sidelined. And it is not just about domestic politics. The Indian diaspora acts as a bridge between Washington and New Delhi. They are connectors, translators, facilitators of deals and dialogue. They host summits, they fund initiatives, they bring Indian leaders to American audiences and American leaders to Indian audiences. If Trump antagonizes India, he risks burning not just diplomatic bridges abroad, but also these cultural and political bridges at home. That means losing valuable connectors who help smoothen tensions and create opportunities. Another layer of this influence is cultural power. Indian Americans are dominating Hollywood, music, literature, and sports. The more visible they become, the more mainstream their issues become. America is paying attention to India not just because of geopolitics, but because of the visibility of its diaspora. Every time an Indian American rises to prominence, it reinforces the narrative that India matters. Trump, a man who understands the power of image and branding, knows he cannot afford to be seen as dismissive of a community that embodies success, influence, and respect. This is why the Indian American factor is not just an afterthought, it is a critical piece of the puzzle. Politically, economically, and socially, this community holds leverage that directly impacts Trump's ambitions. Their rise is unstoppable, their voice is louder than ever, and their ability to shape the conversation in Washington has grown into a force that no president can afford to underestimate. Indian Americans today are not standing in the background. They are stepping into the spotlight with power, with influence, with determination. This community has built itself into one of the most successful immigrant groups in the United States, and that success translates directly into political weight. They are doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, academics, and CEOs, but more than that, they are voters, donors, and organizers who shape elections and policies. For a leader like Trump, who thrives on winning, ignoring or alienating such a group would be a mistake that carries real political costs. Their presence is no longer small, it is visible in every sector that matters, and their impact is multiplying year after year. Consider the numbers. Indian Americans are among the fastest growing demographics in the country, with millions of people and a youth generation that is highly engaged, outspoken, and digitally savvy. They are not just quietly blending in, they are actively participating, pushing their voice into the national conversation. They bring resources, intellect, and networks that amplify their influence far beyond their population size. Their average income is higher than the national average, which means they have the financial firepower to fund campaigns, think tanks, advocacy groups, and media outreach. Any politician who understands the game of politics knows that money plus votes equals influence, and this community delivers both. In politics, Indian Americans have already reached the highest levels. The Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, has Indian roots, and leaders like Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Raja Krishnamurthy. Others hold seats in Congress. These are not symbolic names. They are voices shaping debates on technology, healthcare, immigration, and foreign policy. They bring India into the conversation every time they speak, every time they legislate, every time they lead. This is power woven into the very fabric of Washington. For Trump, calculates every move based on leverage. This is a constituency he cannot afford to push away. On the ground, Indian American communities are concentrated in key states that decide elections: Texas, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona. These states have seen razor-thin margins, and even a small, motivated voting bloc can tip the balance. Imagine an election decided by a few thousand votes, and then realize how much impact a mobilized Indian American community can have. Trump has seen this before. He knows margins matter, and he knows this community can swing them. Their activism, their networks, their ability to mobilize quickly make them a political force that cannot be underestimated. Beyond voting, they serve as cultural ambassadors. Through festivals, films, business networks, and academic institutions, they bring Indian culture into the American mainstream. They are storytellers, innovators, role models, and they shape how Americans view India itself. This matters for foreign policy. Americans respect and admire the Indian community. It strengthens India's image as a partner, and it creates pressure on leaders to maintain strong ties with New Delhi. For Trump, pays close attention to perception. This is another reason to tread carefully. The Indian American community is also highly organized. They form associations, political action committees, and advocacy groups that are effective at pushing their agenda. They know how to leverage their collective strength, and they know how to influence both parties. They are courted by Democrats and Republicans alike, which means they always have a seat at the table. This balance of power gives them leverage, and leverage is something Trump respects more than anything else. India today is not just an emerging market. It is the beating heart of global technology and innovation, a driving engine that powers the digital world. From the smartphones in your hands to the software running in Fortune 500 companies, there is Indian influence everywhere. Silicon Valley, the hub of American innovation, is stacked with Indian talent at every level. From entry-level coders to CEOs of the biggest tech giants like Google, Microsoft, Adobe. This is not by accident, it is by design, built on decades of education, hard work, and ambition. For Trump or any U.S. leader, to take a tough stance on India would mean threatening the very ecosystem that sustains America's leadership in technology. When you look at the workforce of America's most innovative industries, you see the fingerprints of India: engineers, data scientists, researchers, product developers, entrepreneurs. Millions of them have come through America's universities and stayed to build companies, develop groundbreaking solutions, and push the boundaries of what is possible. They are fueling artificial intelligence, space exploration, renewable energy, cybersecurity, and biotechnology. Without them, America's innovation machine would slow down. That is leverage, and Trump understands leverage. If he chooses to play hard against India, he risks disrupting this delicate balance that keeps the United States ahead of competitors like China. Consider the tech outsourcing industry. U.S. corporations rely on India's massive IT sector for efficiency, cost-effectiveness, and talent. Companies like Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and HCL manage the backbone of operations for some of the largest American brands. Millions of American jobs are interconnected with this supply chain of skills and services. If India is treated as an adversary, these ties could weaken, and the cost to American businesses would be enormous. It would not just be a diplomatic issue, it would be a financial one that hits corporations, stock markets, and ultimately voters. Trump, as a businessman, knows what disruption like this means, And it is not a risk he can afford to take. Then there is the startup scene. India has become one of the fastest growing hubs for entrepreneurship, producing unicorns at a pace matched by only a few other countries. These startups are not only serving domestic markets, they are partnering with U.S. companies, expanding globally and creating technology that feeds directly into the American economy. Venture capitalists from the U.S. are pouring billions into India, betting on its growth. To push India away would be to cut off future innovation pipelines that could reshape industries like fintech, health tech, agri-tech, and more. Education is another critical element. Indian students make up one of the largest groups in American universities, especially in STEM fields. They pay billions in tuition. They contribute to research, and many of them stay to work in the U.S., fueling industries that desperately need skilled labor. This flow of talent is a direct bridge between the two countries. If Trump gets tough on India, he risks creating barriers for this pipeline, hurting universities, research labs, and companies that depend on fresh talent. Innovation is the fuel of the future. India is supplying that fuel. Every code written, every chip designed, every algorithm tested by Indian talent strengthens America's global advantage. Trump cannot afford to jeopardize this engine of growth and progress because without India's contribution, America's dominance in technology faces real competition from other powers that are waiting to take the lead. When you talk about defense and military cooperation, you are talking about strength, and strength is what defines nations on the world stage. India is not a weak partner that needs constant protection. It is a nation with one of the largest standing armies in the world, a nation that invests in modernizing its forces, a nation that can hold its ground in some of the toughest geopolitical neighborhoods. For Trump or any U.S. president, this makes India not just an ally but a force multiplier. When America looks to balance threats in Asia, in the Indian Ocean, and even in global conflicts, India's role is indispensable. Defense relationship between the United States and India has grown into one of the most critical partnerships of the 21st century. Billions of dollars in arms deals have already been signed, from fighter jets to drones to artillery systems. This is not just business. This is about interoperability, about making sure that American and Indian forces can work side by side when the situation demands it. Joint exercises like Malabar, which bring together navies from the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, are not just symbolic, they are displays of unity, signals to the world that these nations are prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder against any threat. Trump, who prides himself on projecting power, knows the value of these demonstrations. Intelligence sharing and counterterrorism cooperation have also become vital areas of engagement. India faces real threats from terrorism and extremism, and America benefits from having a partner that understands this battle firsthand. By aligning strategies and sharing information, both countries strengthen their defenses, and this contributes to global security. If Trump takes a hard line against India, he risks jeopardizing the flow of intelligence and the trust that underpins these sensitive areas of cooperation. Without trust, alliances collapse, and Trump knows the cost of fighting battles without strong allies. The geography of India gives it a strategic edge that no other partner can replace. Sitting between the Middle East and East Asia, access to the Indian Ocean, India is a natural anchor for American security strategy in the Indo-Pacific. China's aggression in the South China Sea, its border conflicts, and its naval expansion all make India a critical counterbalance. America needs bases, partnerships, and logistical support in this region, and India provides the access and the reach to project power. Trump alienates India, America loses a vital strategic foothold and hands an advantage to China. Defense trade is not just about weapons, it is about technology transfer, co-production, and research. American defense companies are building relationships with Indian firms to create systems together, from aircraft components to advanced missiles. This builds economic ties alongside military ties, creating a web of cooperation that strengthens both nations. Trump, the dealmaker, understands the importance of long-term contracts and investments, and defense cooperation with India is one of the most lucrative and strategically valuable deals America has on the table. Military cooperation is also psychological. It sends a message to adversaries that India and America are aligned, that aggression against one will be met with the strength of both. For Trump, who thrives on showing dominance, having India as a defense partner amplifies his image of toughness. Without India, that projection weakens, and competitors like China and even Russia would be quick to exploit the gap. Energy and trade are the arteries that keep nations alive, and when you look at the United States and India, You see a flow of commerce that is too important to break. India is not just a buyer, it is a massive and growing consumer of energy, resources, and goods, and America is in a position to supply and benefit. Trump prides himself on deals and economic victories, understands that every tariff, every sanction, every hard move against India risks cutting off access to one of the largest markets in the world. This is not theory, this is reality, and reality is measured in billions of dollars. India's demand for energy is skyrocketing as its economy expands, its cities grow, and its middle class explodes. Oil, gas, renewables, India needs them all, and the United States has the capacity to provide. Liquefied natural gas shipments from the U.S. to India have become a growing trade channel, creating American jobs in Texas, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania. These jobs depend on India's demand, and if Trump disrupts this relationship, he is not only hurting foreign ties, he is hurting workers at home. That kind of economic self-sabotage is something he cannot afford, not if he wants to hold on to his base and his message of growth. Trade is not just about energy, it is about goods that move in both directions. The United States exports aircraft, machinery, defense equipment, and high-value products to India while importing pharmaceuticals, textiles, IT services, and consumer goods. This balance creates a relationship where both nations rely on each other, and breaking it would damage supply chains that reach into hospitals, businesses, and households in America. For Trump, who measures success in deals and trade numbers, the U.S. India relationship is one of the most promising economic engines on the horizon. The Indian market is also irresistible for American companies. Tech firms, retailers, agricultural producers, and energy giants are all looking at India as the next big arena of growth. With a population of more than 1 billion people, rising incomes, and rapid urbanization, India is the place where the next generation of consumers will come from. Apple is building stores, Amazon is expanding operations, Tesla is eyeing entry. All of this represents billions in future revenue. If Trump takes a hard line, he risks pushing India to favor European or Asian competitors, and American companies lose. For a president who built his reputation on winning deals, losing access to India's market would be seen as weakness, not strength. Global supply chains also make India critical. During the pandemic, the world learned how fragile these chains are. India stepped up as a hub for pharmaceuticals and essential goods. America's dependence on Indian generics and vaccines is not just about commerce, it is about public health. In technology, manufacturing, semiconductors, and renewable energy equipment, India is becoming a key player. Trump, who talks about securing America's future, cannot ignore that these supply chains are tied to India, and without cooperation, America faces higher costs, slower growth, and vulnerability to other nations filling the gap. Energy and trade links are not static, they are expanding. Every year the volume grows, every year the connections deepen, and every year the stakes get higher. The cost of being tough on India is no longer a symbolic diplomatic issue, it is a direct economic threat to America's prosperity, and that makes it a line Trump cannot cross without hurting himself. Cultural and diplomatic soft power is the invisible force that moves hearts and minds. India has mastered it like a champion, stepping onto the stage with confidence and charisma. It is not just about military strength or economic clout, it is about influence that flows through music, cinema, cuisine, spirituality, yoga, festivals, and traditions that have spread across the globe. In the United States, Indian culture is no longer foreign, it is mainstream. Bollywood films stream on American platforms. Indian food is part of everyday menace. Yoga studios fill cities, and Diwali is celebrated in schools, corporations, and even the White House. This cultural presence creates bonds that politics alone cannot break. Trump knows he cannot afford to be seen standing against a nation whose culture is loved and embraced by millions of Americans. Diplomacy is also powered by this soft influence. India carries the moral authority of being the world's largest democracy, a nation that has managed to hold together diversity on a scale unmatched by any other country. That example resonates globally. When India speaks on international platforms about freedom, sovereignty, and development, it carries a voice that is both respected and relatable. America benefits from aligning with that voice because it strengthens the democratic narrative against authoritarian models. If Trump goes tough on India, he risks undermining a partner that enhances America's image in the world. The Indian diaspora acts as a living extension of this soft power. Millions of Indians across the globe carry their culture, their traditions, their innovations, and their success stories wherever they go. In the United States, this has created not just cultural visibility, but also admiration. Indian doctors, professors, entrepreneurs, and artists shape how Americans perceive India itself. Every time an Indian American succeeds, it adds weight to India's soft power. This is influence built without tanks or tariffs, influence that no president can afford to dismiss. Education is another pillar of India's soft power. Students from India fill American universities, excelling in science, technology, and research. They contribute to discoveries, patents, and new ideas that strengthen the American system. At the same time, American universities gain financially and academically from their presence. This flow of talent creates mutual respect and deeper cultural understanding. For Trump, who values prestige and reputation, undermining this channel would weaken America's global academic leadership and harm its ties with one of its most important partners. Religion and philosophy also play a role. Concepts like yoga, meditation, and Ayurveda are not just cultural exports, they are billion-dollar industries in America, shaping wellness, lifestyle, and health. They create goodwill, they build cultural bridges, and they influence millions of lives on a personal level. This kind of connection cannot be measured in trade statistics, but it is real and it is powerful. For a leader like Trump, who thrives on image and branding, going against a nation that provides such positive cultural associations would be politically unwise. Soft power also comes through diplomacy in global organizations. India's role in climate talks, peacekeeping missions, and humanitarian efforts earns it respect on the world stage. When America aligns with India, it shares in that respect. When it opposes India, it risks looking isolated. Trump, who always seeks to project dominance and leadership, understands that partnering with India amplifies his position, while being tough on India diminishes it. Politics is about numbers, about perception, about momentum, and when it comes to Indian voters in the United States, the cost of alienation is something Trump cannot afford to pay. This community is organized, wealthy, and highly influential, but most importantly, it is politically awake. They are not sitting on the sidelines. They are participating, donating, canvassing, and shaping the national conversation. For Trump, who knows elections are decided by slim margins, every single community matters, and this one carries more weight than its size suggests. Losing them would not just mean losing votes, it would mean losing access to networks of influence that spread across business, technology, and academia. Indian Americans are one of the fastest growing voting blocs in the U.S., concentrated in key states that determine the outcome of presidential races. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Texas, Georgia, Arizona, these are battlegrounds where thousands of votes can tip the balance. Within these states are strong Indian communities that have the resources and motivation to swing results. They organize voter drives, fundraising events, and political campaigns with precision and energy. Trump knows that even a small shift of this bloc against him could be the difference between victory and defeat. Campaign donations are another factor. Indian Americans are among the highest earning groups in the country, which means they have financial firepower to contribute to campaigns. Politicians across the spectrum actively court them because their donations flow not only in individual checks, but also through organized political action committees. These resources fund advertisements, rallies, outreach efforts, and the machinery of electoral success. If Trump is seen as hostile to India or dismissive of Indian concerns, that flow of funding could move to his opponents. In a modern election where every dollar counts, losing this support is not a risk he can afford. Beyond money and votes, there is the matter of image. Indian Americans are deeply connected to India, and their pride in their heritage translates into strong reactions when U.S. leaders disrespect or antagonize their homeland. Negative rhetoric or policy against India does not just stay in the realm of foreign policy, it becomes personal to millions of Indian voters. They see it as a slight against their identity, and they respond by mobilizing politically. Trump, who thrives on image management, cannot ignore the optics of alienating a community that has become a symbol of success, integration, and contribution in America. Influence spreads through visibility, and Indian Americans are highly visible in media, technology, medicine, and politics. They shape the narrative not only through direct political participation, but also through opinion columns, news analysis, and cultural presence. Their voices are amplified by their positions of respect, and when they speak, people listen. If Trump alienates them, he risks losing control of narratives that shape how voters perceive his relationship with India and with immigrant communities in general. In the long game, demographics matter. The Indian American community is young, growing, and increasingly influential with each passing election cycle. Their children are entering politics, business, and media with confidence, and their numbers will continue to expand. For Trump, who always calculates future advantage, this reality makes it clear To be tough on India is to risk alienating a group that will only become more powerful as time goes on.